We're going to Denver here in a couple of weeks. And so we're working with Daniel at one of his restaurants with Ash'Kara. So I want you to talk a little bit about that as well. He's a chef partner. And so he's got he's got River and Woods in Boulder and an Ash'Kara in Boulder. And he has one in Denver as well, the Ash'Kara. And that's the one that we're going to. Wish we could go to Boulder this time too, which we've done in the past, but it's just trying to do as much as you can in 2 days. It's just, the drive time takes away some of the educational time. So we try to keep these, smaller events a little more focused and more walking. And then Marie Molde, as you know, she is a client solution specialist for Datassential. Worked with her many times in the past and will in the future. And I've got to talk to you about another event coming up that we want you to be a part of. We'll do that afterward.
If you need me to come to Colorado, I'll be there. No,
it may be Boise, Idaho, actually, for our other event we're doing for ICCA in September.
Oh, that's
nice.
Great.
Yeah. So, and then RJ Harvey, who hopefully will be joining us. I'll keep looking for him to get him on here as well. Don't see him yet. And then, of course, we have, Jane, who everybody knows, from the past. She's worked with us for so many years, but now she is with Potatoes USA, Jane Foreman. So glad you're with us as well. So let's get started. If you want, Daniel, with you, this whole thing came around talking about food waste and your passion for it. So why don't we just start with that and, talk to us a little bit about, what you're doing in that area and the partnership that you have done with Potatoes USA and some of this as well. And we'll show the video in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me on, and hello to everyone. So, I look at food waste as a tremendous opportunity to instill a high sense of stewardship in our teams and a high sense of awareness of the responsibility that we have as culinary professionals to utilize every ingredient as optimally as possible, and to teach the concept that there's the same level of respect that you should have for an ingredient that is $1.25 a pound as you would have for an ingredient that's $19 a pound. So whether you're working with a beautiful portion of ribeye or whether you're portioning out carrot sticks, it's the same level of intention and the same level of respect for what you're working with. So when I look at food waste, I look at it as a mentality. We look at animal proteins and we think of nose to tail utilization within that concept and how to use every element of that animal, obviously from a food cost standpoint, but also from a sense of responsibility to that ingredient. And then I look at vegetables in the same category as using, I say like root to top utilization. So how do you use peelings? How do you use tops? How do you use scraps? How do you use, there's prime cuts with vegetables the same way there's prime cuts with animal protein. So trying to instill that sense of value, trying to cross-utilize menu items across various, whether it's day parts and cross-utilization of your menu from AM to PM dining, or whether it's utilizing a trim from one process into a stock or a soup or a sauce for another menu item, not only driving value, but also increasing profit to the bottom line. So a consciousness that is sitting in a high level of awareness of food waste inevitably just leads to a more successful operation, but it also is an opportunity for us to instill mentorship for our teams and just to get people excited about how to utilize product properly and how to be creative. Like I was saying, Kevin, when we were having our little, our pre-gathering a couple days ago, what do we have to do to a piece of bacon to make it delicious and craveable? We throw it in the oven, we get it crispy, and we're done. The process is over. We've done our job. That's not really instilling an element of being a chef. That's not necessarily connecting with the process of building flavor or connecting with folks. That's basically passively preparing something that's already fantastic, right? But what do you have to do to a lentil to make it craveable and delicious? What do you have to do to a potato to make it craveable and delicious? And this is where I think our opportunity as food service professionals comes in, so that we can connect with these different levels of enchantment to delight our guests. And at the end of the day, that's what hospitality is all about, is creating opportunities for guests to feel loved and nourished, and like something more interesting is going on in our kitchens than the kitchen next door. And that's what keeps folks coming back.
No, I totally agree. Hey, can you change your background maybe, Daniel? Because right now it's like really dark. Do the
Is it?
There you go. Yeah,
Sorry
we want
about
to
that.
see you.
Okay.
You're like in a shadow.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
There you go. That's
Okay,
now we
good.
can see you. That's awesome.
Great.
So no, I love that talk. And and I think that part of what you're talking about, when I know what you've done in your restaurants too, is you create this amazing culture of people to think, right? To people to think about other things and just, coming in for the day and getting your job done and going home and, taking your money. I mean, you have
Right.
people thinking about, the future, thinking about the planet, thinking about, there's a lot of reasons why you want to do what you're doing. And it's more so than just even the bottom line of the restaurant, but that's included as well. And I think
Right.
that's what's so cool. Is like this whole thing has got a much bigger, a vision, if you will.
Yeah, it's about being, it's about being thoughtful. It's about being meticulous. It's about having a higher level of awareness. I think a lot of tasks in high volume kitchens end up being mindless because we just get lost in the moment of production and needing to perform and needing to hit certain targets. And when you get lost in that expression, you sometimes lose the subtleties of what it really means to have a successful culinary operation. And the layers of that are extremely complex. But I think to have an operation that's rooted in sustainability needs to have a mindset that is thoughtful and focused, and that doesn't necessarily have to take away from volume or efficiencies or hitting projections. And a couple of our restaurants, we've partnered with an organization called Zero Foodprint, where 1% of the guest check goes towards regenerative agriculture projects within Colorado. It's a pilot program. Colorado's the second state. California was the first state. So that gives us an opportunity for guests to connect with the ability to literally pass on 1% of the meal they've just enjoyed to projects going on in the soil on the ground in Colorado, which is where our restaurant group is based. And it gives people that connection to, I just had a beautiful meal, and now I'm helping to fund farmers doing extremely important work on the ground in the soil, so that our planet continues to thrive, and that we have a high yield and high nutrient content in our produce. So, for us, it makes a lot of sense that we're being thoughtful in the kitchen behind the scenes, and then our guests see that front facing as well as they complete their meal, and they see that on the check. So, any opportunity we have to honor sustainability and get our guests' mindset back to the wellness of themselves and the planet as a connection point, without it feeling controversial or without it feeling like anyone's preaching about anything, because a lot of this stuff gets sometimes tied into politics and climate change and all sorts of things that we don't want to talk about at the dinner table, because some people get uncomfortable. So obviously we want to keep it simple, we want to keep it lovely, and we want to keep it easy. So whatever we can do in that regard really helps. And that helps us train our staff on the front of house as well, to let people know that, all of the herb stems from that garnish we utilize in this vinaigrette on this other dish. So it gives people that opportunity to see that we're being smart and thoughtful and strategic in the kitchen.
No, that's awesome. And, a lot of people probably know, but some may not know, but in all the times that I've been doing, I'm a great, statistical guy. I really love reading stats and all that. It's been for probably 2 decades. The Colorado, when you look at terms of obesity and healthfulness, Colorado is the healthiest eating state in the country, and has been. Probably people from California want to punch me right now, but
that's great. I didn't realize that was the case. That's fantastic. I knew we were up there. I just didn't realize what it was officially.
Yeah, it's been number 1. Yeah, for many years.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's totally
obviously
cool.
You have to tailor the message to your guests, right? Because the lifestyle here goes in a direction where those conversations are easy. People like knowing that. Reading those little snippets on the menu just lend itself to a very high level of trust and building our brand. But in other parts of the country, it's harder to do that because you're not starting out on a level playing field with an awareness of, I mean, you know, everyone comes here to hike and go camping and go rafting and go biking, and it's an outdoor focused lifestyle. So within that, there's a lot of dialogue that people want to hear about keeping things beautiful. So.
Yes.
So a lot of you may know we have an online training platform called Potato University, and we ramped it up this year to get new modules. And one of the things is we're working with chefs, and we wanted to reach out to Daniel and create something on how you can use the whole potato and eliminate food waste. So you'll see some examples of things that you may have thrown out originally or be throwing out in your kitchen, but you can actually make a profit with some of the scraps and things that you may have thrown out. So, and that's what this video is all about. And the video pretty much speaks to itself. And Daniel, if you want to add anything.
I mean, yeah, working with Chef RJ is always an enlightening process. Oh, he is? Oh, great. I mean, but he made this bar snack out of potato peelings that, completely blew my mind and was incredibly craveable and delicious. And that's literally selling compost. I mean, it's amazing. He did these potato pickles that I'm still nibbling constantly that are fantastic. I never would have thought to make a bread and butter pickle out of a potato, but it's brilliant and it's fantastic. And it's one of those things that creates a guest moment where they're like, wait, what is this? A bread and butter pickle with a potato? So Chef RJ, yeah, I was just talking about some of the mind-blowing things you're doing with potato trim.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chef. And sorry, it's a little unorthodox today, but yeah, we've been doing some fun stuff, and it was great having you in the Spud Lab. As Jane, I'm sure, mentioned, we're coming up with different things that can be done with the potato to help operators conceptualize food waste in a different way, right? So you and I had a great conversation about nose to tail utilization when it comes to animal proteins and so forth. Right. And the same can be said about vegetables, right? So if we're using root to tuber or so forth, right? That's the cool conversation. The potato cracklings that we showed you when you were there in our Spud Lab, where we're taking potato peels, something that normally would just be thrown away, now all of a sudden become this crispy, indulgent bar snack that you can toss with a myriad of different seasonings, whether it's tahine or everything bagel seasoning, or just have fun with it. And that helps also drive your bar sales. So something that normally goes in the trash, you're reutilizing it as a solve for a lot of different operational issues you may be faced with.
I love the pickle idea. We have to have that at our next event in your Spud Lab in a couple of weeks, and we bring GCIA there.
Absolutely. We got those and potato biscuits I think we have to show for you there, Kevin. So we got awesome plans.
And the potato chorizo, I mean, if we're talking about how to have a menu item that just rocks food cost and nails guest perception, I mean, utilizing potatoes, obviously, instead of pork or beef, or any other animal protein, even lamb, as a chorizo substitute, not only appeals obviously across plant-based needs and folks that are flexitarians and looking to experience other styles of food, but it's brilliant, and you can charge more for it because it's so unique, and your bottom line is phenomenal.
Well, and the genesis of that idea really came from, we've all had fry cooks that put that bag of fries or tater drums or tater barrels next to their fry station. They get slack thawed, and you're left with these little crumbled bits at the bottom of the bag. So what do you do with that, right? And so that's exactly how we came up with that idea. Toss it with a little malt vinegar powder, some smoked paprika, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and all of a sudden you've got this really cool plant-based crispy topping that hits all the notes of chorizo. And it doesn't have to be something that's a meat analog. It doesn't have to be something that is conjured in a food lab. It's basically something that is wholesome ingredients that we're all familiar with, and we're just repurposing it in a different way, which is really the name of the game of being a chef at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah, in our conversation too, one thing came up that I was really intrigued by, which is, I think Jane had mentioned there's some chains out there that are looking at cutting down the number of wings from 10 to 8 or whatever it might be, right? But then you guys talked about how to replace that with a couple of potato, flavored wings or what. Talk about that concept a little bit, because I'm intrigued by it. I think that's genius.
Yes. So, I mean, so often we see crispy chicken wings or chicken strips tossed in a sauce and served with fries, right? So the flavor profile is already there. Our thought was, why don't we take something that mimics a wing, eats like a wing, has that crispy exterior, something very similar to like a potato wedge, where we can get that textural experience on the outside. Toss it in a great sauce, whether that's a buffalo sauce or lemon pepper or garlic parmesan. And then now you're having a different conversation about what plant-based eating is. And so from the operational side of things, if you're looking at your food costs and you see the cost of wings going up and up and up, how can you mitigate that same plate, but still give your diners that experience that they're looking for and that they're craving? So, take half the amount of wings that you normally serve, bulk it up with some crispy potato wedges that are tossed in a similar wing sauce. And then all of a sudden, now you've got people sharing at the table, some that may have that veto vote of being a vegetarian or a plant-based eater. They can enjoy that same textural experience at the same time that their companion at their tables are enjoying, a traditional chicken wing. And so all of a sudden now you're having a community that's enjoying something that's delicious, but you have an operational solve at the same time.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a huge win.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you guys have a hard cutoff. Do you have to leave yet, RJ, or do you have another minute for a question?
What do we got? 10 minutes, Jane?
Yeah, we probably have 5.
I think we have about 5 minutes till we get the jet out. But so.
Yeah. So let's talk. So, again, I'll go back to you, Daniel. It's like, what are some of the other things you're doing in this arena? Even, not maybe even in sustainable situations or whatever you're doing. Because I know that that's a big element for customers, right? Consumers are looking for, and I know Marie's going to actually talk about some new terminology, which is going to be really cool about what they're looking for as well. But what are those things that are really resonating well that people say, oh my God, I'm coming to your restaurant for reasons beyond the fact that I love your food and I get great service, but you're doing these awesome things, for our planet, and for our life.
Yeah, I think it's about, establishing we have a very tight network of purveyors that we utilize. We work, directly with a lot of small farms and ranches in the area, which I know isn't an equation that makes sense when you're talking about, high volume chains. But, how can you maintain that idea of integrity and that idea of sourcing in a way that guests still feel connected to? And these are things we continue to struggle with because, as an example, we had, a farmer we were working with that we were exclusively getting an arugula blend from, and they couldn't keep up once we hit over, 120 pounds a week of volume. They couldn't do that, so I had to supplement that with, an organic grower in California that's, high volume through our broadliner, so that we can mix the blend and extend it, throughout our different kitchens and have enough available to still nail the flavor profile that I wanted and have those peppery notes of, really beautiful arugula. But, obviously there's a push and pull within that idea, but, the bottom line is doing everything you can to establish that connection point of this is why I made this decision and this is why it matters in the final expression of the dish, whether it's the flavor profile or whether it's the visual aesthetic. At the end of the day, if something isn't craveable and delicious, it doesn't matter anyway. Every decision has to start and end with the idea of flavor. So you can do all these things behind the scenes, but if it doesn't result in something that is a truly excellent tableside experience, it doesn't matter because no one's going to want to come back and try it, right? So you have to lead and end with flavor. You have to really nail that idea of value perception, especially these days. It's harder than ever with inflation, which is actually an interesting, I think, a data point we were going to bring up as far as when you look at what's happened with across, look at what has happened with, chicken, pork, beef, dairy products. I mean, butter has gotten insane, grain, flour, everything's up, double digits percentage points. And then you look at, what was it, Marie? We were looking at the potato, as far as the inflation rate, to utilize, ingredients that aren't necessarily hitting those challenges from a sourcing standpoint, from a supply chain standpoint, and still presenting something that feels really delicious and fantastic tableside is extremely important and necessary. But we always have the dialogue, like we make our own, we do a Middle Eastern yogurt cheese called labna, and we strain it and we have the whey that drains off after about 48 hours of hanging And then that way is utilized to brine chicken. Then that's utilized in another dish. So we're using waste products from one dish to add flavor and salt content and depth to another dish, inevitably saving on creating a brine for the chicken. Obviously, we're not talking about a lot of money when you're looking at a brine for chicken, but at the same time, every little bit counts. And it's also about a consciousness across the kitchen of value, and people, our cooks seeing that a dish is being composed from waste parts from another dish. And I think that is a very cool thing to see. Sauces, vinaigrettes, and soups are always my sweet spot for food waste opportunities. In activity that I used to do when we were building this consciousness with our teams, which I think is a very dramatic thing to take into your own kitchens, is if you're in an area where you have a commercial composting opportunity, I would come into the kitchen, at a appropriate time, not in the middle of a crazy service. But I'd pull out the compost bin and I'd put on some gloves and I'd reach into it and I'd pull out some stuff and throw it onto the prep table on a cutting board. And I'd say, oh, look, these bell peppers, these weren't broken down properly. Look what's left on these. And I'd go through all these different things that I found in the compost. And then I'd lay them all out and I'd be like, well, this is what we could have done with this. We could have done a beautiful romesco sauce with the trim that was left from these bell peppers. All of these cilantro and parsley stems we could have turned into a beautiful pesto. So these are different ways to create connection points with your staff, and then that inevitably translates to an amazing awareness of stewardship with your guests.
That's awesome. I bet that Lebna waste, though, it probably adds a nice character to the brine that you're doing. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So I know, RJ, you guys probably have to take off. We have a video to show as well. Is there anything you want to say before we show the video?
Well, one other thing I just wanted to add, Chef Asher is spot on with what he's doing in his environment, in his world, when it comes to food waste and food reduction. And I know so many of the folks on the call, they kind of set up operationally so that they have as little food waste on the front end, so that they don't have to think about, a lot of these challenges. But I think what's important to take away from this whole conversation is that mindset, right? Especially from a leadership and strategy mindset, as we're looking at new menu items or looking at different ways to train our staff. It's all about, if we can care about the little things, like some of the food scraps going into the trash and repurposing them in different ways, what does that do for our entire organization? What does that do for our entire industry, right? As we talk about inflation, this is a direct way to combat inflation, finding different ways and interesting ways that you can utilize food waste to make a great business case for you, and hopefully save, some not only resources for your organization, but save resources for the industry as a whole and the planet as a whole.
No, I agree. And the other thing we talked about on the pre-call was, I thought very interesting. It's almost like a challenge to our member companies that, working and to sponsors, and probably more importantly to sponsors, it's like working with, our members to sponsors and sponsors to members, trying to find ways in their factories, which I know our sponsors and their companies are very good about utilization, right? And there's not a whole lot of waste coming out of it, but a lot of that's sold off, to farms as feed or whatever it might be. Is challenging people to start thinking a whole different way. Is this something that could come back into another part of the process to become more people food? Not that it's a waste going to animals, but, it's something that's like, I think all of us need to look at this big picture and say, all right, where are we going in the future? What can we do? You travel around the world and you see the different, items that people eat that we don't necessarily eat in our culture. And is there ways we can challenge our people or educate them, maybe is a better way to put it, to try some things that are different. Look at Mexico and insects and bugs and things they eat, which are marvelous and awesome, right? Which, just would turn somebody, like here, it's like, what? Are you kidding me? It's like, no, you got to try it. It's like, this stuff is good.
Yeah, crickets have some of the highest protein concentration of any ingredient on the planet.
Yep. And they're awesome. You put some chilies, with them. Oh my God. It's like, it's to die for.
Exactly. Very true. But no, it's true, Kevin. And if you have an operation that's connected to a brewery, that idea of taking spent grain, which we were, speaking of also, and turning that into a cracker or a flatbread or a granola that you can, take spent grain from, evening beer production and turn that into granola for breakfast, a yogurt granola parfait, and say it's made with the spent grain from the beer that is available on the menu.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, this is great. Well, Mike, if you're ready, let's go to show that video, and then we'll segue into Marie's part of this presentation.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Be well.
Controlling food waste is part of every food service operator's job, and today we're going to show you how America's favorite vegetable can do just that. I'm Chef RJ Harvey, Director of Culinary with Potatoes USA, and with me I've got my good friend, food waste expert, Chef Daniel Asher.
Thanks for having me.
So some of the benefits of utilizing some already cooked potato products on your menu is you already have it in-house. There's very little labor that you have to do to repurpose a wonderful cooked potato item.
There's so many different ways to utilize it and to coax different flavors, different bases, different sauces, different finishing moves, all from one fantastic ingredient.
For example, already cooked mashed potatoes make a wonderful appetizer by forming them into little patties. We're topping those with a little bit of Canadian bacon, a beautifully poached egg, a little hollandaise sauce.
Sometimes I actually refuse to put it on a brunch menu because I know how popular it'll be.
You as a chef are really responsible for decreasing your overhead costs, but also increasing the amount of profits. Ka-ching! Everybody loves a crispy hot baked potato, but when you have leftover baked potatoes, there's not really a lot that you think about of doing with them.
A baked potato, once you wedge it and you have that great surface area of already creamy, beautiful potato on the inside, drop that in the fryer. You've got this awesome crunch on the outside and this creamy, beautiful, delightful potato in the middle.
These are gonna fry up in a matter of minutes and take a fraction of the time that a normal steak fry would take to fry from raw.
We're gonna use it as a base to do a spin on the street food dish elote.
We've got a little bit of grilled corn, cotija cheese, we have some sour cream, mayonnaise, got some smoked paprika for that little smokiness, and then fresh squeezed lime juice.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna take these beautiful steak fries that are nice and crispy, just kind of arrange these in a nice beautiful pattern. Cream corn love all over the top.
Gorgeous. Look at that.
Hit it with some fresh cotija cheese all over the top. Some more of that chili lime salt. You're gonna be like, nachos, what? I think scraps get dismissed by chefs because it's the easy thing to do to simply throw it away.
You have someone set up at their station and they're sitting there peeling potatoes for an hour and a half. In most kitchens, that's just going right into the compost bin, right?
We can turn these into a delicious bar snack by simply tossing them with a little bit of olive oil, a little salt and pepper, something salty that's crispy and delicious. That's also gonna help up your bar sales too.
And if you're running a culinary operation where you're having the mindset towards potato skins be so elevated, how is that impacting the rest of your equation from the front door to the back?
One of the things we don't often think about are how food scraps are unintended in our kitchens. Take a bag of tater barrels or tater drums, for example. Your cook takes those to the fry station, they leave them there for 2 to 3 hours, however long service is. By the time your service is done, you're left with items that are already slack thawed, that are going to not be optimal quality. We can repurpose that by simply taking those scraps of those tater drums or tater barrels, crumbling them, baking those in the oven until they get nice and crispy, and seasoning them with something wonderful like a chorizo spice.
Mocking that texture of a chorizo, adding vinegar powder, roasted chilies, garlic, onions, wonderful flavor profiles to turn those little crumbled bits into addictive, craveable bites.
That chorizo spice tater drum can then be topped on a myriad of different things. That's the reason why chefs even exist in the first place. It's to repurpose different parts of food into something that is delicious and extraordinary, using our talents to the fullest extent.
Why do we approach expensive proteins using this theory of nose to tail utilization? Why don't we look at a potato as top to root utilization? Something that we have the power to do every day.
So for more great recipes like this and other ways to control your food costs and reduce food waste, visit spudsforchefs.com.
So, yeah, Marie, I'm really excited about what you're here to talk about, beyond the fact of food waste. I know is some that you're going to cover here as well, but also sustainability, food costs, and also, climate change, which is kind of an interesting topic these days. I think Daniel mentioned it earlier. It's like it's one of those dangerous conversations at the table at dinner, right? But anxious to hear what you have to say about all this. So you're on. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. And yes, I'm so thrilled to be here. I love being part of ICCA and GCIA events. And It is true. Climate change is not the probably most fun dinner table conversation, but in the content for today, we're going to talk about sustainability in a few different lenses, climate change being one of them. Also, how consumer values, some of us highly value sustainability and planetary health and the environment and things like that, and how holding those values is really increasing the importance of sustainability in the food world. So a lot of what we've talked about already is echoed here, and yeah, let's continue the conversation. So teeing off with some macro trends. So thinking about sustainability in a broad sense, we think it's really important to kind of ground this conversation, knowing that values and the personal values that we hold as individuals are really making an impact on what we decide to consume. So according to our latest research, 3/4 of consumers say that the values that they hold are a huge part of your identity, whether that's religion, or it could be sustainability, or it could be something to do with your social circle or whatever it may be. Your values really make up who you are as an individual. And to build on that, 71% of consumers say that their personal values influence the food choices that they make and what they decide to consume. So you may have heard this from Datassential before, and that's that a few of us, or a lot of us, most of us maybe grew up hearing this phrase, you are what you eat. But we think today that paradigm has really shifted, and it's fair to say and accurate to say that we eat what we are, and the food choices that we make reflect the values that we hold. And another recent study we've conducted, we wanted to understand from consumers, so from the number of public and social issues that are at play and important and relevant in our lives today, do you think that food brands and restaurant operators should be taking a stand on these public issues? So what do consumers think about that? And we found that the majority of consumers, and especially younger consumers, say that they want to see food brands like those of us on the Zoom together today to take a stand on issues that are important to consumers. And you can see in this chart that that's especially true when it comes to younger consumers. So today's Gen Z consumers really want to see restaurants taking a stand and really making efforts toward issues that are important to consumers. And we'll see in a second that sustainability and climate change is something that is really important to younger consumers. So here's that list that we posed in this survey. Which of these issues should food brands take a stand on? Hunger and food insecurity is the #1 issue. And I think we could certainly argue that this discussion we're having about food waste is really, in a lot of ways, an answer to that. But then you can see down the list, #5 is climate change. And that's something that 33% of Gen Z consumers, or around 1/3 of consumers overall, want to see food brands take a stand on. So we at Datassential really believe that climate change, again, it's probably not the most comfortable conversation to have at dinner with your friends or even family, but it is something that is going to increase in importance and really expand in the coming years. And there's really a huge conversation happening about how eating sustainably is our best approach or tactic to combat climate change. So headlines like this one happens to be about McDonald's targeting net zero emissions in the next 30-ish years, but certainly a lot more headlines where this one comes from. And I think this data is really powerful. So here we're asking consumers, so it's not easy for all of us to always make a difference with something like climate change or sustainability in a lot of ways. Like maybe it's not easy for us to change to quit using all plastics or drive an electric car instead of a gasoline car, even though we probably all wish we could do that with gas prices today. But consumers generally agree. So the majority of us believe that we can mitigate climate change. We can make a difference for the health of our planet by eating differently and with the food choices that we're making. And to build on that, consumers know that we as individuals can make an impact, but we also think that food brands, like those of us on this call together today, actually bear more responsibility for addressing climate change than individuals do. So that goes, further and builds on this idea that consumers want to see action from brands and organizations toward the social and other issues that they care about. So I think Panera's really been a leader. It was years ago that they published the no-no list, for example, and they recently have partnered with Cool Food, so low carbon cool food meals. Maybe some of you have ordered some of these or seen this program. Panera was the first in my knowledge to advertise working with this program, sort of identifying on your menu what the low carbon choices are. But newly Aramark, so Aramark with their tons and tons of locations around the country and schools and other on-site food service, they're also implementing this program. My understanding is that a food item cannot use red meat to be able to be designated cool food. I think that that's one no ingredient for this program, but otherwise other types of protein, seafood and fish and chicken, all great. And this is just a designation that helps consumers see that their choice is something that's more sustainable and healthier for the planet. Chipotle is another example. They have this calculator that can help you see gallons of water that you save or antibiotics that you avoid when you order certain meals at their brand. And we'll see in a second, they also have some compostable packaging that they advertise at their stores as well. This is a cool retail product. This is a bamboo leaf tea. So bamboo has all these kind of sustainability attributes for it as a plant. It's like the fastest growing plant, and it stores more nitrogen or all kinds of things. It doesn't require irrigation. So this tea was developed for that sustainable minded, eco-conscious consumer in mind to be a really sustainable, good for the planet beverage option. And here's another sustainability oriented retail product. So this one is made from purple sweet potatoes. So they sort of leverage the superfood attributes of a purple sweet potato. They talk about how traditional dairy is very energy intensive, and this uses much less water. It's a plant product compared to an animal product, etc. It advertises having prebiotics and all the other good things of yogurt, but is a better for the planet, kind of more sustainable choice. And then here's that program that Chef Daniel mentioned. So this is Zero Foodprint. So this is just a really cool thing. Chef Daniel mentioned this, but when a consumer dines at a partnered restaurant with Zero Foodprint, 1% of their check goes back toward farmers to help them invest in sustainable practices. So really cool program that is growing, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of this. I want to segue next to talking about consumer eating habits and how we're maybe shifting our eating habits today toward, or with efforts toward, maybe being a little bit more sustainable. So I'm not going to drive home plant-based eating, in too much or entirely in this presentation, but we all know it's a huge trend right now, and we know that the environmental motivation is a huge reason for plant-based eating. So in this data here, Environmental motivation is that 38%. So 38% of consumers say that they choose plant-based foods for the environment and for animal welfare. More people are saying they choose plant-based for health reasons, but 38 is still quite a big chunk. We know that those are two really core motivators for moving toward plant-based eating. And that 38% does increase if we look toward younger generations. I think for Gen Z, that percent is 45% of Gen Z consumers are choosing plant-based foods because they believe they're better for the environment and more sustainable and better for animals and things like that. So today in our country, most of us are meat eaters. So in the United States, over 70% of us are meat eaters. And even though we hear a lot about vegetarian, vegan consumers, that is a really small chunk. It's like 2 to 3% of consumers eat only plants or mostly plants. But overall, if you're flexitarian, pescatarian, vegetarian, etc., it's about 29% of the population is a meat limiter in some way. And that actually increases even further when we look at Gen Z consumers. So today's young consumers in their 20s, early 20s, and teenage years, 36% of them are limiting their consumption of meat in some way. And this data is asking about, when it comes to the categories of food available to us, which are we looking to increase in our diets and which are we looking to decrease? So those on the left are our animal products. And yes, there are some consumers looking to increase animal products. The biggest chunk is looking to increase fish and seafood, which is great. Consumers really understand that fish and seafood are lots of sustainable options are available in that way. And seafood is a very healthy protein for us. But you can see on the left, 14% of consumers say they're actually looking to increase meat. So that is a pretty small chunk. And we do know that protein is such a beloved macronutrient. We're not surprised to see at least some amount of consumers wanting to increase meat. But that percentage is down from just last year by 6%. Whereas if you look at the plant categories, on the right-hand side of the chart, those are all what most consumers are looking to increase, especially so when it comes to fruits and vegetables. About 60% of us are looking to increase vegetables and fruits in our diet, and also a lot of us are looking to increase other plant-based choices. There's also reason to believe we're looking to consume more plant-based dairy compared to traditional dairy. I'm going to talk now about sustainability terms on the menu. So I am especially excited to share this menu adoption cycle. So I know most of you are familiar with our menu adoption cycle. You know that early stage trends are on the left and later stage trends are on the right. And when it comes to macro trends in the industry overall, so things on here like drive-through only operations or natural colorings, all kinds of things, lots of these, and those in bold, are related to sustainability. So zero waste is an inception level trend right now. Root to stem, which RJ and Chef Daniel have talked about, is an inception. So the idea of using the whole plant, whereas nose to tail or using the whole animal is just one stage ahead of that. A lot of sustainability terms are also rooted in our health and wellness menu adoption cycle. So what's early stage is climatarian eating or flexitarian eating, but we also see lots of things as we move along the trend curve, from grass-fed to antibiotic-free and different free-from claims. This chart is a really busy one, but it is pretty interesting to see in this blue shade here which sustainability terms skew toward a limited service restaurant compared to a full service. So when it comes to limited service, they do focus on kind of the more clean label or free from claims like dairy-free or cage-free or non-GMO, whereas full service operators skew toward kind of more premium terms or terms that signify more premium product like local or heirloom. When it comes to what's growing, plant-based is hugely exploding on menus, as well as non-GMO has also experienced recent growth. And when it comes to sustainability overall, our machine learning engine predicts that sustainable will continue to grow just about 50% or so over the next 4 years. So we do expect we'll be seeing more sustainability claims on restaurant menus. Within the plant-based realm, these are the terms that are growing the fastest. So plant-based overall, vegan, dairy-free, and meat-free. These are some animal welfare terms that are growing. So pasture-raised, humane, cage-free, all have double-digit growth. Here's a couple examples on menus. I'll leave for you to read through this later if you'd like, but lots of different proteins are labeled as sustainable or humanely raised, antibiotic-free, and things like that. Regionally, so this is just kind of a fun map. It shows by state. So Kevin, to your comment about how Colorado has the healthiest eaters, California and the Northeast do edge out Colorado when it comes to sustainable on the menu. So this is that literal term sustainable. The darkest green states mention that on the menu more. And here are the top indexing terms that are sustainability related by region of our country. So it's interesting that each region does have a different term. So organic skews toward the west, vegetarian and meat-free toward the northeast, farm-raised toward the south, and seasonal in the Midwest. When it comes to consumer experience, and I'm sorry, I know I'm buzzing through this pretty fast, but I want to make sure to leave time for questions. These are terms shaded here that skew toward each generation. So you can see a lot of the sustainability terms skew toward a millennial consumer. Vegan skews toward a Gen Z consumer, and the notion of farmed fresh and wild caught actually skew toward a boomer consumer when it comes to age groups. Here are recent sustainable callouts and menu introductions from top chains. So here's one with potatoes. So these are advertised from Burgerville as being local potatoes. We have a couple sustainability oriented chicken sandwiches here, like all natural cage-free chicken breast. This one has all natural, free of antibiotics. And here's a US farm-raised catfish from Logan's Roadhouse. And then we also see sustainability callouts when it comes to beverages. So 100% sustainable coffees. This is that quesadilla at Chipotle that's made with 100% compostable packaging. It also uses a responsibly raised certified chicken. And then to end things here with zero waste. So food waste, really important issue, but consumers are also looking to reduce their use of plastics. 62% of us say they're trying to reduce use of plastics these days. Here's a cool concept in DC that's really sustainability oriented. They have 8 locations. 90% of their trash is diverted from landfills. They don't use any plastics. Here's an example of a zero waste vodka. So I believe this is only in Colorado, but it's kind of the idea of like the milkman of old, where you bring a milk jug and you give it and it gets refilled. That happens here, but with liters of vodka. This is a really cool app to fight food waste. This started in Europe. So you can sign on to this app and you can pay a fee. Usually it's less than $5, and you get a surprise bag of unsold food from restaurants that partner with this app. So they just are trying to use up all their food. So this app is called Too Good to Go. This loop packaging service has been around for a while. It's again the idea of reusable packaging. And then ending things here with packaging, we just continue to find in our research that we talk a lot about food, but it's really important to think about sustainable packaging too. Over a third of consumers say that the type of packaging material used with food is important to them. A lot of people are concerned about sustainability of packaging. And if sustainable packaging is available, most consumers will choose it. And a lot of consumers report already being drawn to sustainable packaging. So a lot of conversation about food and food waste, but we should also remember to be talking about packaging as well, because that's something that's also important to consumers. And that is all I have. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. Really, that was great. Yeah. So Marie, I mean, it was really kind of interesting that, again, the whole topic of what we were talking about, it's all the interest in consumers were the top, the hunger and food insecurity. It was really, I love seeing that actually. I thought that was great to see that at the top of the list, and climate change being up there pretty high as well.
Yeah.
So it's really a one question I have for you. So in all your research and what you're seeing now, we see things more about plant-based waning a little bit, that people are starting to question the healthfulness of some of that. What are you finding in there? Are you starting to see some of that?
Yeah, we definitely are. And that's one reason I wanted to make sure to talk about plant-based in today's conversation, because it's also really clear with a lot of the companies in the plant-based space that they are not in that space to provide healthy options. They're actually in the space to provide climate saving options. You can really kind of go on the website of a lot of these companies in the plant-based space, and they're like, we're here to save the planet and be a sustainable choice. And here's the water we're saving compared to traditional animal products and things like that. So we know that consumers, actually, there's a bit of a disconnect, because consumers choose plant-based because they think it's healthier, but that's not always the case, and companies are more so going after a sustainability message. That's not true for everyone, but that can be said as something we should be thinking about. So does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely, it does. No, that's a great answer to it. It's a different look than I had actually heard before. So that's cool. Daniel, what do you see in your restaurants and feedback you get from your consumers?
I think that, and that was fascinating, by the way. Thanks for that presentation. It was great to see. I didn't even realize some of those terms had such deep uptake already, which is great to see. But as far as our audience is concerned, people want to connect with where things are from and why we're using them. I didn't even realize that I was doing, for the majority of my culinary career, I've always been obsessed with sourcing and where things come from, and I put together a menu around those ideas. And now that term is storytelling. That's become a huge part of what builds a brand with a very high level of consumer connection. So that's really what it's come down to. Is I've seen more than ever, specifically through the pandemic, is people want to grasp onto something that feels like there's a deeper meaning, building a sense of community, having a sense of purpose, building resilience together, feeling like we're doing things that matter. This is becoming more important than ever before. So if you have something anonymous on a menu that really doesn't have anything noble or curious or romantic to convey, that's not necessarily going to connect with the guest in a way that a different dish that has 3 or 4 different components in it that you can talk about or put up on the board and have people say, oh wow, that's pasture raised, and you partnered with a farm that's practicing regenerative agriculture principles like cover cropping and holistic land management. Wow, okay, no, I definitely want to go with that. That's fantastic. So these are the conversations that were harder to have before, and now I think are easier than ever. And it was great to see the connection point with with climate change, that consumers are having this. And like I said earlier, people don't come to a restaurant to feel uncomfortable. They come to a restaurant to fill a basic need of being hungry and thirsty, first and foremost. But beyond that, there's something else that they're looking for. And there's thousands of restaurants that just fill the basic need of hunger and thirst satisfaction. But the places that are doing a little bit more to push that conversation or to create a connection point or an idea or tag some organization or, and I'm glad you mentioned Zero Food Print, like that you look at it, you could say, oh, what is this about? And you go to their website and you're sitting there eating dinner and you're like, this meal is benefiting carbon farming practices. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. And this is what's adding value on a level that we never even conceptualized before in food service. And it's amazing to see. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And I think it's great. And I think all of these moments, we have our guests for, whether if you're a quick service, whether you have your guest in front of you for, 11 minutes or full service dining, sit down 90 minutes, whatever that captive audience is that you have, that's a moment of connection point. You can accomplish something there. Do you just want to accomplish, oh, they got a burger and fries and they paid X number of dollars and we met our food cost and we met our labor cost and now they're gone? Great. That's one way of doing our job, right, as culinary professionals. Or do you want your guests to leave and say, wow, I got a burger and fries, but wow, I've got this other thing that I want to check out, and I had no idea that this company was involved with these guys. And oh, I didn't know that there's a program for finding out if the fish that I'm eating is actually a smart idea as far as ocean wellness goes. Oh, that's cool. Then they're taking that they took from your dining experience, and they're telling 4 friends about it later that night. And then those 4 friends are telling 10 other people. And that one meal at your restaurant has created 100 different connection points because of one small, thoughtful thing that you did a month before, not knowing where it was going to go or what it was going to create. That's the power that we have.
That's awesome. And it's so true. One thing that comes to mind when you talk about this too is, especially when it comes to, to carbon footprint, is, I mean, for more than a decade, and I don't even know how long they've been doing it, there are parts of Europe that it's required on packaging and retail, for them to put where the source is from. I mean, it comes from Israel, and here's the carbon footprint. And It actually has to be on the label. Interesting that that's never been a conversation that I know of that's come up in FDA, USDA, or anything in the United States for that. But I don't know. It could be a question to throw out. Do you think we're going to end up there eventually, where there will be some requirements for that?
I wonder if we won't end up there, because I know a lot of colleges and universities are opting in for that now. So
wow.
College students now are seeing like the red, yellow, green, or the carbon footprint of all of their dining hall choices. So that's kind of like priming the pump in a way.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the younger consumers, it's really interesting. They're looking at this in a whole different way. And it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see where all this ends up.
Well, and they're going to be making all the purchasing decisions in a matter of years. So, yeah,
absolutely. Well, I hate to say this, we're wrapping up toward the end here. So, one of the things I'll make a couple of comments at the end here, but is there final comments that you would like to say, either Marie or Daniel?
None for me. It's a pleasure to be here, though, and an exciting topic. And Chef Daniel, I loved hearing about what you're doing at your restaurants. It's really admirable, and I hope that more restaurants follow your lead.
Well, thank you. I very much appreciate that. Yeah, I just want to say that, restaurants have become more important than ever to be a place for community to gather and feel safe and feel loved. And we have a tremendous opportunity to use that voice for maintaining the status quo or demonstrating some level of change. And you can demand change in very subtle ways. You can demand change in very loud ways. So obviously do what makes sense for your operation and where you're at. But I think it's never been a more crucial time as food service professionals to use our voices and to bring up important elements of our society that might not make a lot of sense anymore, and things that we want to demonstrate that we want to do differently. And I think that's a very important resource and tool that we have as mentorship, and being in a place of stewardship of the land around us, is to do things with a very high level of intention and mindfulness.
I love that. That is great. So, and it's a nice segue into, I think, we have GCIA, some of the things that are coming up. We're going to be in Denver, August 24th through the 26th, and we'll be with Daniel and many other chefs from the area. It's such an incredible market. I mean, the creativity in Denver is, to me, is just absolutely amazing. So I'm looking forward to coming back there and spending time there. In September, we have an event for ICCA. It's going to be in Boise, Idaho. And it's about I call it the day in the life of a potato. So it's during potato harvest. So we're going to go start the morning at a harvest at a farm, harvesting, look at some dry storage that they'll do from that standpoint, and then go all the way through further processing French fries, right? And how they make French fries. So I think that's kind of cool. I love doing stuff like that. And Boise is such an interesting place too. I mean, it's a small city and it's crazy growth right now. I mean, it's insane what the people are paying to live in a small city like that. But the restaurants are very good, so that's going to be awesome. And then we're in San Diego at for our last event at the end of October. That's going to be for the GCIA Culinary Combine. It's always great to go there and work with Brian Malarkey and Richard Blaze. I love those two guys. They crack me up. They're competitors. I would say somewhat friends, but I love the fact that they share a building. and they're major competitors. You can literally go on the other side of the wall and be in the other person's restaurant, which is so rare. Both have just fantastic restaurants. So looking forward to all that. For everybody, we will have on Friday, we'll get the video up from this, and Marie will get her slides to me as well. So we'll have that up as well. And then our next webinars are scheduled for September 6th and October 4th. It's the first Tuesday of every month. On October 4th, the dairy farmers of Wisconsin are going to ship out cheese tasting kits to the first 30 people that want it. So that it'll be something, you're going to get like 10 pounds of cheese, which is, it's a nice thing to have. We just did a cheese tour with them back in April, and it was phenomenal. So, or first part of May. So anyway, thanks everyone. Thanks to our sponsors and our members for being with us today. And we'll close out with a video, Mike. Thanks, and we'll see a lot of you soon. Daniel, thanks so much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Appreciate it. Look forward to it. See you in Denver.